Well, you think the superhero movie landscape is drying up, and then along comes Infinity War. Holy crap. This movie raised the freaking bar. Avengers Infinity War stars Josh Brolin, Robert Downey Jr., Tom Holland, and so many others, and is directed by the Russo brothers. What's up, guys? Quick backstory on this. I saw this movie opening night, Thursday night. I did not get a chance to review it, and I wanted to see it a second time. I loved it the first time. My theater experience was amazing. Like, I saw this with like Marvel fanatics, and everybody was just eating every second of it up, including myself. Of course, the ending happened. This will be a spoiler review, by the way. But the ending happened, and I was just like floored, like gutted. Like, what the hell just happened? That was insane. We will be getting into that ending throughout this review, but originally I wasn't going to review this just because on YouTube there were like thousands of reviews for this movie. So, you know, my biggest thing was, what new can I say about this? But really, after doing some soul searching, two things. First off, the point of a review is to tell you my thoughts, my feelings. So that alone is justification for me to do a review on this movie. You don't have to watch it, but I feel like I need to talk about it. Plus, this is probably the first new movie that I'm going to give a certain rating. And if you're familiar with my channel, then you probably know what that rating is going to be. I've never done this before. This is how perfect this movie was to me, you know, and it's perfect for so many different reasons. And I know that word perfect is really like subjective, but yeah, I can't wait to get into this movie. There's so much to talk about. Now, instead of doing like a quick plot synopsis like I usually do, most of you watching this have seen this movie. You know what the plot synopsis is. Thanos is collecting the stones, and he wants to set the balance to the universe. There's too many people in the universe. His home planet suffered because of this, and so he wants to set things right by really causing genocide. That's really what this is. But in Thanos' mind, it is for the greater good. Overpopulation caused his planet to just completely go into ruins. So he doesn't want that to happen again. So we're going to get into Thanos and why he is like one of the greatest villains I've seen since The Dark Knight. I'm going to be mentioning The Dark Knight a couple times throughout this review. But first, let's start out with that opening scene. The opening scene really is that after credits scene at the end of Thor Ragnarok. And this scene is so important because it sets up a few things. It sets up the threat that Thanos is. You know, Thanos, first thing we see is Thor's head in his hand, you know, and him crushing it like a rock. And he is threatening Loki. He wants the Tesseract, and he is willing to kill Thor. And it looks like easily to get the Tesseract. And then all of a sudden, Hulk jumps in, and then there's just this fight between Hulk and Thanos. At first, I was a little upset by this because A, I'm such a massive, massive Hulk fan. And B, I don't think I quite understood what was the mindset of the Hulk in this scene. This wasn't, you know, full-on rage Hulk, like say in the movie The Incredible Hulk. No, Bruce Banner has learned to control the Hulk more, and so this Hulk was pretty much afraid of Thanos. And because so, he gets his ass handed to him. And so Heimdall sends him down to Earth, and then Hulk warns Tony Stark and Doctor Strange that Thanos is coming. You know, we have to be prepared. I know you have this shit going on with Steve Rogers, Captain America, but you need to put that behind you because you know what? We're in deep, deep shit. But the big takeaway from that opening scene is let's set up how much of a threat Thanos is, and boy is he. Now, most of this movie does take place in space, but that first scene, once, you know, Hulk is sent down to Earth, there is this huge fight that is the stuff of dreams for a comic book fan. I mean, you have Iron Man, you have Doctor Strange, you have Spider-Man, all in the same frame, just whipping ass. This is the coolest I think I've ever seen Iron Man in any movie since. You know, it seems like every movie he upgrades himself, and he seems his most powerful in this movie, and he needs to be. But we also see him playing that, you know, that mentor role, that father figure to Peter Parker throughout this. And it really plays into what happens at the end of this movie, which we will get into. But meanwhile, Thor is floating through space after what happened on Titan, and who picks him up? None other than the Guardians of the Galaxy. This scene is the funniest scene in the whole movie. The movie is filled with great comedy. Like, it has like the perfect balance of comedy and drama. I mean, it's got some really dark, crazy stuff. This is the darkest movie of the whole MCU. And I think that is one of the reasons why it's set so far apart from the rest of the MCU in tone. But because it's so dark, and you know, because Thanos is such a threat, it's nice to have these good comedy moments along the way. And they are good comedy moments. You are laughing your ass off, especially when you see Thor mixing it up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I've always thought that if you put Thor in the same room with Star-Lord, or Star-Lord in the same scene with Iron Man, then you're gonna have a great scene. It's gonna be really, really funny. And Star-Lord really steals every scene that he's in, actually. I love the scene where he starts talking like Thor, you know, starts speaking in his accent. There were so many scenes in this movie that I had to catch a breath because I was laughing so hard. And really that was because of Thor and Star-Lord. And then Thor ends up pairing up with Groot and Rocket, and he goes to get the Stormbreaker, which is his axe, because of course we know that he lost Mjolnir. I can't say it. I will not try to say that again. His freaking hammer is called Mjolnir or something like that. I sound like a cat when I'm saying that. This is ridiculous. But he lost the hammer. So now he's got to go get the axe, which is even more powerful than the hammer. And a quick little side note here. This movie has so many characters, and what the Russo brothers did with all these characters, I think, is nothing short of a miracle. It is the most perfectly paced movie I think I've ever seen. It's over 2.5 hours, and it feels like it flies by just like that. Both times I saw it, I loved it immensely. I want to see the movie a third time. That's how great this movie is to me. But I'm already jumping ahead of myself. But the Guardians of the Galaxy, specifically Star-Lord and Gamora and Drax, they head over to Nowhere, which is like this skull-looking, not really a planet. It's more of like, from the research I did, it's more like a celestial being, I guess, that died along the way, somewhere along the way. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but it's just a cool looking place. It looks like a freaking skull. But this is where Thanos has his meeting with Gamora. He is there collecting a reality stone from the Collector. Benicio del Toro is always so freaking weird in his latest roles. He is the perfect Collector. He's just such a unique character. But really, Thanos, he tricks Gamora into getting the reality stone. I need to pause to drink my Thanos juice. Thanos juice, that doesn't sound right. But he kidnaps Gamora, he takes her over to Vormir, and over in Vormir, he runs into none other than Red Skull. All this time, you know, I've always wondered, where in the hell is Red Skull after Captain America First Avenger? Well, he was exiled, and he was sent to Vormir, and he's kind of a guide to anybody that wants to get to the Soul Stone. But in order to get to the Soul Stone, they have to commit a sacrifice to somebody that they love. And that is one aspect of this movie that works so well. There's so much emotion in this. And the emotion being in the villain, actually. There are some scenes where you understand what Thanos is actually going through. This is not easy for him. He does have a heart. As a matter of fact, when he kills certain members of this movie, he lets them know that he respects them. You know, I think those make for the best villains. The villains that you can kind of understand where they're coming from. Thanos embodies that more than most villains. And that's one reason why The Dark Knight worked so well, is because the Joker was such a great villain. There was so much to dig into. And there was this mystery to him that made him so interesting. It's interesting because Thanos is such a great villain in a universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that has had some of the weakest villains I've ever seen. It's one of the reasons why I have usually preferred DC over Marvel. At least in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. I liked the villains in those movies. I haven't come across a villain in the MCU that I have absolutely loved, you know. Blonsky was probably one of my favorite villains, and it's one of the reasons why I love the Incredible Hulk movie so much. But here we have Thanos, not only like the best villain, but of any universe, Thanos is one of the greatest villains. And I didn't even really care for the guy this whole run. I think it's perfect how they made you think that this was going to be just a kind of a shallow type of villain, because they didn't really give you too much along the way. And now that we're here, they give you everything in this movie. This is Thanos' movie. You know, they spend most of this movie letting the audience get to know Thanos. And so by the time you get to that ending, you feel so much more for our heroes. But while all this is happening, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange have been sent out to space. When they were fighting Thanos' henchmen, they ended up getting stuck in space. And so Tony Stark's kind of having to babysit Peter Parker along the way. But once they get on this Titan, there's this really great fight with Thanos. There's a moment where they're like this close to actually beating the guy. But then Star-Lord finds out that Thanos killed Gamora, and he freaks out, and he starts punching him in the face, which is pretty stupid. But to me, the biggest takeaway from that scene was Thanos is literally killing Tony Stark. Like, he has stabbed him in the stomach. He is this close to death. And then Thanos, you know, right before he is about to kill him, he tells him that he respects him. And it's nice to have a villain not be so shallow and so stereotypical and just simply kill the guy and then move on. No, as he's killing him, he's actually saying, hey, I respect you as a person. I respect you as a fighter. You actually stand up for what you believe in. But eventually, big fight between Thanos and Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Spider-Man, and then he gets the Time Stone. So he ends up back on Wakanda. On Wakanda, we got this massive battle with Captain America, with the Black Panther, all these soldiers, and they're all fighting. And then once Thanos gets there, he is able to finally get the stone from Vision. Once Thanos gets that stone from Vision's head and he snaps his fingers, the scene that followed just completely floored everybody in the theater. Like, I could not believe what was unfolding. You know, our heroes, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Star-Lord, I mean, people that you would never think would die on screen, they died just like that. And I think it's really interesting that the first one was the Winter Soldier, because he's just like, I don't feel good, and then he just drops just like that. So it's like Steve Rogers doesn't even have a second to process it. That's how quick it was. But the one that really was the most gut-wrenching was when Peter Parker, you know, he falls onto Tony Stark and he's telling him he doesn't feel good. And then he's like pleading, I don't want to go, I don't want to die. And I swear, like, the theater, there wasn't a dry eye. It was such a great scene. This movie did things that I never thought I could feel from a comic book film, especially the MCU, which I thought up to this point had gotten pretty formulaic. Still quality movies. I always felt like they were playing it safe with these movies for, you know, for good reason. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's what I always thought the MCU was doing. But with Infinity War, they raised the bar so high. And a lot of people are going to say, of course, these heroes are going to come back. They're not going to be dead. But to me, that's not the point. The point was they gave us this completely unexpected ending. And yes, if they come back, how are they going to bring them back? You know, that's what's interesting. It's a good story, you know, and it's an unpredictable story. This is not something that we could have ever predicted for the end of Infinity War. You know, we always think there's going to be some casualties, but our heroes are going to win in the end. That's not what happened at all. And I think that's why this movie is so perfect. So guys, in the end, this is a first. I have never given a new movie a unicorn rating until now. After watching this movie twice, this is like one of my favorite comic book films I've ever seen. I'm positive it's going to stay there. I've seen it twice, so I give it a unicorn. It was like perfect. Loved the hell out of this movie. I can't wait to see it again. I can't wait to buy it when it comes on Blu-ray or 4K. I mean, I love this movie to death. I can't get it out of my head. I'm still talking about it with my son every day. Every time I get home from work, my son's like, yeah, Infinity War, this was amazing. And we just get into this big conversation. That's the power of Infinity War. It's insane. I am a DC guy. Infinity War beats anything in the DC universe. That's how great this movie is. I'm talking about the current DC universe. The Dark Knight, I think, is still just a little bit better than this, but they're damn close. They're really close. Anyway, guys, that's my spiel for Infinity War. What are your thoughts on this movie? Let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free for Fridays. And we've been talking Marvel last week. Last week was like Marvel week, so we were talking Infinity War. Highest grossing movie of all time for first weekend, domestic and international. This movie is just really like setting all kinds of records. Crazy. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.